Well, I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. My weekend was kind of odd. My wife hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim with three of her friends, and I was the relief vehicle, which meant since I couldn't drive down into the canyon, I had to drive from Jacob Lake to I think it's called Tosaya. It's a little teeny town that is about 4 blocks long in the middle of the highway that is just outside of the Grand Canyon Park. And at both ends of the town, there is a roundabout, so it forces everybody to slow down. It's I while I went over there, and while I was waiting for them to finish their hike, I walked up and down the town maybe 4 times. So I said hi to everybody. It was almost as exciting as you can imagine it would be. And then when they were all done, we were trying to find them, and it was really hard because even though I had their phones pinned, my GPS was showing me that they were about 200 yards further south than they actually were. Happened to be on the other side of a row of buildings, so we could not see each other or anything. It was, yeah. Luckily, everybody made it fine, and they are all systematically recovering. I hope you guys had better excitement than that, or were able to get stuff done that you needed to. Today, I wanted to go through, I have been working on grading. I found out while I was there, I did a lot of grading, and then I found out nothing took because the internet was, I mean, nothing worked. So I'm still doing that, working on it every day. Hopefully you'll see that soon. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple different things. One is I wanted to touch on applying the tools of artistic critique. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the carved biomorphic abstraction. And I wanted to talk about paper mache, as well as talk about texture and light. The paper mache is supposed to be done before the texture and light, but or it's supposed to be, I don't know, they kind of overlap. I think that with the paper mache, since you have to do it and then let it dry, and it's its own little thing, you can do it while you're working on the texture and light as well. That's not going to be a big deal. You're just not going to apply, for the paper mache assignments, you're just going to do the paper mache on your carved biomorphic abstraction. And when you submit your work logs, the work logs are labeled for which modules they are in. You need to submit only that stuff, that your time tracking for what you did in that particular module that the work log is labeled as. The reason I said that is that there are a couple of people that turned in work logs that were for completely different modules. And there were a couple of those artist reviews that were also turned in with completely different artists. And I should speak to that too. All the artist reviews, if you get 0 points on it, that just means that you sent in the wrong one. So just go and send in the correct one. And for each artist review, you are only to be looking at the artists that are in the background for that particular module. For example, the artist review for carved biomorphic abstraction, you should only be looking at the artists in the section labeled background carved biomorphic abstraction. I've talked about this before, and it says that right in all the assignments as well. If you use different artists than are required for the artist review in that particular module, then you'll get a 0 until you resubmit it with using the correct artists, and that's it. The 0 just means you need to resubmit and take care of it. It does not mean that you absolutely fail. So that's important to remember. And I will be putting module 7C up this week as well. That doesn't mean that you're responsible for doing it immediately. It means that it's up so you can see what is entailed and get yourself ready for that. So and what I'm saying is really, I went through and I looked at the sculpture-based photography. The internet was working for that, and that was pretty spectacular. There's a lot of really good shots. There were a couple people where it looks like they took a lot of shots and they accidentally sent in two of the same image. And I put a note down. When you fix that, when you resubmit all the correct images, then I will change that to get that grade. Most of the time, Canvas will tell me. I just need you to, if you don't see any action on it, let me know or email me, and I will take care of that as soon as I can. One of the problems with resubmitting is you have to resubmit everything because it will overwrite whatever you sent in before. I said this because last year I had a couple of students who sent in just one or two photos and realized they had to send in more. They resubmitted additional photos, each photo separately, which meant every time they resubmitted, made a new submission of a photo, it overwrote everything that had been sent in before. So I was only seeing one photo at a time. So you need to submit everything at once. That is also true for quizzes. If you need to redo the quizzes, any of the quizzes, there's two ways you can do it. You can either type in the comment section your new answer, and if you do that, you need to email me and let me know because Canvas won't tell me otherwise. And then the other way to do it is to just retake the entire quiz. If you do that, you need to put in answers for every single question. So if you're going to retake a quiz and you know which answers are right, what I would do is just take a picture of the quiz answers as you scroll down. And then after you do that, then retake the quiz because, like I said, it will overwrite all the answers. And if you take pictures of your correct answers beforehand, when you retake the quiz, you can just write in the correct answers again and only change the ones that you got wrong. So that's, yeah, and stuff like that. There's no reason not to get perfect scores on the quizzes because you can retake them as many times as you need to. So I'm going to revisit the applying the tools of artistic critique assignment really quick. Again, the first three people that submit their own critiques of their own work, and the first three people that submit critiques of somebody else's work, you guys get extra credit. Both of those are important. When you critique your own work, you need to remember to pretend it's the first time you've ever seen it. And I've had people in class that would not accept that they were doing, all of us artists are weirdos. We have OCD, we're perfectionists, we're hypercritical of our own work. And as a teacher, it's frustrating for me because you guys don't believe it when I tell you you do a good job, or you dismiss it, or you're inappropriately modest about it. And so when you critique your own work, instead of being harsh and nasty about it, I want you to pretend it's the first time you've ever seen it. I guarantee that when you do that, you're going to do a better job critiquing your own work. I've actually had people in the class before cry because they realized that they were doing a good job and their stuff was decent. So remember that. And if it's something where you're really honestly not happy with it, I don't know if you guys watched Witcher, but in the first season, there was a comment by one of the wizard teachers. She said, sometimes the best thing a flower can do is die. And sometimes when we create work, the best thing for that work to do is to fail and teach us something. And that's a reality. And if you can honestly say of your work, the best thing it could do is die, then that's fine. It's honest. But please be really careful doing that because, like I said, most artists are going to be hypercritical of their own work way more than anybody else's. A couple of different ways that people can do this. If sometimes you can do the whole filming inside, with your computer, where you just share the screen and video the screen of the work that you see, one of the discussion boards, or you can hold the work in front of you while you critique it, or if it's your own. Or I've had people do this too. They've gone onto one of the discussions, blown up a picture as big as it gets in their computer, set up a little tripod with their phone, and just record their voice doing the critique while the phone is trained onto the computer screen. And they usually works really well. So there's several ways to do it. I did want to review the whole idea of the biomorphic abstraction really quickly. One of the things that can be kind of frustrating, we did talk about the PowerPoint for abstraction I shared with everybody. I wanted to show some examples of the biomorphic abstraction as well. And we're going to go to the Tate website. There's just a couple photos, but then I'll also show a couple videos. And the links are in the module. I just edited it and put those into the module so you can see that. What is really important to do on this is, okay, we're sharing this page. You see this kind of figure right here that looks kind of odd. It is obviously an abstracted figure. But I'm going to share the Tate gallery page. If I can, let's see. There we go. The Tate has some really awesome stuff. With the biomorphic abstraction, I have had people, I was going to say, with that artistic critique thing, I have actually given 0 points to a couple people, and she actually redid them, which is, to her credit, a couple of these people did, but where they would just film themselves talking about the artwork. And what they had actually done is set up the phone so it was showing the artwork, and then they accidentally hit a button so it turned around and showed their own face. One of those people I was mentioned redid it. Another one just didn't think the points were worth it, and so didn't bother. But you need to be showing the artwork. And I wanted to remind people too about the 4 steps of artistic critique: description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation. I wanted to show what good examples of biomorphic abstraction look like. I put some links. Like I said, I updated that assignment page, or that page, with some links that show you some other further examples of biomorphic abstraction. It is something that does not look like a real thing that you would see outside the window. It's an abstraction. Some things are simplified, some things are distorted. With it, the biomorphic idea comes along where it looks like it could be, I don't know, sometimes it looks like it could be a cell. It looks like it's related to organic objects, like maybe teeth or knuckles, bones or coral, sometimes succulents, cactuses, things like that. Maybe it is referencing different elements of an animal without actually being the animal. This is Jan Arp, and I'm going to scroll down and show you some other things, and then I'll pick one of these things to critique. So here we have, there's a painting, and you see there's some organic shapes. Jean Moreau called these organelles. Barbara Hepworth Dame Barbara Hepworth, she does these beautiful flowing pieces that almost feel like it's wind or veils that are somehow captured in a moment. Henry Moore does these things that look, I mean, we can tell that they're related to a human figure. There's things like maybe this is a shoulder and an elbow. This could be a hip and a knee right up here, maybe a calf right here. We see breasts, we see a head. Louise Bourgeois, nature study. I mean, this area right here kind of feels to me like it's almost like asparagus or something, wrapped in like a grass type of thing, maybe. I don't know. It's not identifiable as a specific thing, but it does feel organic. And one thing that you notice that's common among the three sculptures is that the edges, for the most part, everything flows and is smooth. And Dame Barbara Hepworth, you have some sharp corners right there, but for the most part, these are flowing and are smooth. Let's see if we have, okay, here's mother and child. There's a lot going on that relates to what Henry Moore was doing, and it's done about the same time. You know, they overlap quite a bit, but we can see something that maybe this is an elbow, perhaps, and another hip, knee, calf, maybe this is her neck, maybe this is the bundle, it's a child. But again, one of the big things is that it feels organic. Another big thing is that it's smooth. What can be really frustrating and devastating to the grade is when you block it out and leave it as a block without sanding it down or smoothing it. It needs to have smooth and flowing lines. There's a couple reasons for that. One is that makes it a biomorphic abstraction, but another big reason is that makes it so that your layers of paper mache are going to fit a lot better. Now I did, okay, let's see. I'm going to go through the quick PowerPoint that is the non-objective to abstract. I hope that you can see this. If the PowerPoint comes up, all right, here. We have something that looks like a pretty realistic tree. This is naturalistic as well, with a lot of emotion in it. This is very stylized, and it's edging towards abstraction. Abstraction usually means that elements are simplified. Here we have the tree image is even more abstracted. We have this kind of furry triangle and the green color clues us in most that it's a tree. But if you saw this in nature, it would be pretty freaky. And then kanji, where it's abstracted to the point where it's just almost organic lines. This is just where the trees, there's two trees, are just splashes of color. And then Piet Mondrian abstracted it even further. Now, this is more the feeling that we're going for with the biomorphic abstraction, because it still feels very organic. But with Piet Mondrian's, it starts feeling very mechanical, almost like the map of city streets, which is what he was going for. And here you can see the evolution from impressionistic, more natural looking tree, simplifying it quite a bit, simplifying it even more, simplifying it to the point where it's just horizontal and vertical lines, removing all the small ones and using larger ones. And then right at the very last one, he's abstracted it to the point where we don't recognize it as a tree at all unless we know it's a tree to begin with. So I wanted to share that again really quick. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm scratching my mustache, Nick, by the way, just in case you're wondering. I'm not picking my nose. I try not to do that on camera. more than 7-8 times during a session. For the artist review section on this, you're going to again just talk about the artist in the background section, the biomorphic abstraction background section. And I'm going to share pages again. These artists, Jan Hansard does some really amazing stuff in this realm. There's also Barbara Hepworth, who we looked at a little bit. She does some really incredible things. Henry Moore works a lot more with the human figure. Barbara Hepworth dealt more with very abstracted geometry that still felt very organic. Sama Noguchi did their thing that was really kind of interesting, but in this one they talk about their own process in the video. And I was going to see if we could share that. But it looks like it's giving me just a little bit of problem. I'm sorry about that. I'm not able to share that one. Konstantin Brancusi did some really fantastic work. And I do want to share this video if we can. Hopefully you guys can see this. So I'm going to turn the sound off on the video, but I want you to see this right here. It's called Fish Number 7, and this is a great example of biomorphic abstraction. It is simplified almost to the point where we can't recognize it as anything, but the material use, the way he smoothed it down, I think really speaks a lot to that organic biomorphic abstraction idea we're talking about. What's interesting to me in this, it's called Fish, and it doesn't really look like a naturalistic fish, except the material choice, or if we want to say that it's painted in such a way that it has these streaks, it looks like stone. And what's fascinating about it is that it's smooth to the point where it feels like there is an element of fishiness to it. It's particularly something like a fish that is gliding through the water. But other than that, I mean, he simplified it to the point where it's unrecognizable as a real thing, but it has that organic quality of like a trout body without very many of the markings. So again, when we are doing the biomorphic abstraction, we are trying to simplify what we see. We're trying to give it something of an organic feel, and we're going to make it really smooth. Again, think of things like knuckles and teeth, things like that. So I'm going to share the teeth thing again, and I'm going to do I'm going to do something of a critique on one of these pieces. And hopefully you guys can see this. I'm going to be doing a critique on this sculpture, To Be Lost in the Forest. And this is a cast. It looks like it's cast bronze and it's polished. The first step of artistic critique is describe. So it looks to me, without knowing for sure how big this is, I'm going to guess. I'm going to say it's maybe about 2 feet long. It does have a gold color to it, a warm gold tone that makes me think that it's perhaps patinaed bronze. It's been polished. The lines are very clean. They've been smooth to the point where it almost feels soft. Even though this is cast metal, it looks like it should feel soft because it's so smooth, and there's no sharp edges or ragged edges anywhere. It looks to me like there are primarily 4 forms that are joined together. A bottom form that reminds me of something of an organically shaped couch cushion, and then 3 forms on top that made me think of if teeth were made into pillows, or a pillow was made into the shape of a tooth. That's what those 3 things look like to me. Okay, the second one is analysis. This looks like it's cast, and so I'm guessing that he followed the process of casting. He probably made it out of clay first, smoothed it off, then cast the clay with plaster, and then cast wax into the plaster and use that wax to make molds to cast the bronze. It could very well have cast it into sections and welded it together. But what's impressive to me is that if it is welded anywhere, it's ground and down and polished so much that even though we know it's metal, it does look like it would feel like a pillow. I said that, but it takes a lot of polishing. This feels like it is organic, and it looks to me that he studied different organic forms, took the shape, portions of the organic forms that he really liked, and then combined them together and smoothed them out. That top right-hand smaller shape reminds me of something like maybe a bicuspid. One on the left maybe could be part of a molar, but that's what it feels like to me. But that bottom, the larger shape on the bottom, it looks like he was referencing. It kind of reminds me of a gloved hand. And so I think as he was doing this, he was really examining forms that seemed attractive to him and selected out the parts that seemed to him to flow together. Interpretation, I'm thinking this was done in 1932. The Depression was starting to hit. It feels to me, with this being so polished that it feels like it should be, or it looks like it should feel soft. I wonder if he did this as a reaction to people's fear about the Depression. And people are still recovering from World War I. A lot of people are thinking that there's different elements in the world that are posing to start another world war. So there's a certain amount of fear. And this feels to me like this was a sculpture done as a comfort object, something to let people know, perhaps, that even if you don't understand what things are, it still communicates things like softness and nurturing. And I find this sculpture, even though I don't know what it is, I can't identify it as something specific, I find that it makes me feel comforted. And then the last one, evaluation. As far as bronze casting goes, this looks flawless. There aren't any cracks. There's no expansion marks. There's no marks of any kind left from piecing it together or casting it. It is executed to the point where it is highly polished and patinaed, and it looks completely finished. If that was what he was trying to accomplish, trying to make something that represented comfort, I think he did a great job. I would say it is successful. So that is pretty much the process going through, and a little bit more of a description of what the biomorphic organic abstraction needs to look like. I don't want people to copy any of the things that you see. what I am trying to stress is that I really am looking for things that reference real world organic objects. And, you know, that can mean whatever you need it to mean, but we're looking for things that are smooth and sanded as opposed to jagged and clunky. We don't want this. I actually had a student who took their block, cut the corners off, and that was it. And we don't want it to look like it was a block at all. I did a video here of, I demonstrated how to carve. And you don't have to listen to me prattle on, you know, if that's the kind of thing that makes you sleep. But I show how to carve it, and then I show the different kinds of ideas of shapes that you can do. Since this is supposed to be biomorphic and an abstraction, what I referenced were things like bones and driftwood and elements like that. And it looks like, oh, there we go. Maybe we can see a little bit of the foam itself. It is disappointing that you see just me staring at it, looking angry, as opposed to what the object, oh, there we go. Here's what the object is going to look like. Now this is before sanding it. I've cut a hole here. This kind of, for me, I used shoulder blade as a reference point, and I wanted to change the axis. So this is flat, and then this starts going flat, but at 90 degrees plane wise to this area. I cut a hole through it because I thought that would be interesting. And I also, I think I sanded it down a little bit. There we go. So I am sanding it down a little bit so you can kind of see what that looks like. So this is not intended to be something that looks like anything. What is intended is that it looks like it is informed by other things. It's supposed to be its own thing, but you can kind of see elements of maybe bones and other organic shapes. And then I also demonstrate a little bit about applying paper mache. And this one, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but your object needs to be sanded. The reason it needs to be sanded is that the paper mache is going to adhere to it a lot better, and it's going to work better. And I'm going to come back to this in just a little bit. So we'll return to that in just a little bit. But I also wanted to share some short videos about what other people have done when addressing the idea of the biomorphic abstraction. This person put it on a turntable, but you can see how polished this is. I don't know what kind of paint they applied to this, but it looks like after creating the whole thing, it feels almost like they put that kind of rubbery paint on it that you might coat tool handles with. Okay, I'm waiting for an ad to wind up so I can show you this one. This is another thing. I don't know what this person was using as a reference, but it's out of carved marble. But it almost feels like when you wind a sheet up around something, it almost feels like that. But it also feels there is a very strong organic component to it. It almost feels like this area here is a little bit more fleshy, and then it feels like the stone was kind of twisted around and wrapped in on itself. And then you can see how smooth everything is and how polished it feels. That looks really good. And I also wanted to show this person does the same kind of thing, but carving wood. This to me feels like they're responding both to the grain of the wood, but they're also, it feels to me like they're also using like bones as a reference point. And just because of the way the lines kind of move and shift, they are kind of flowing, but flowing a little bit of an odd way, just like a lot of bones do. The holes make it, there's some interest there going on with the holes, but this person has also sanded it down so it feels really, really smooth. And I think that that turned out really well. So those are some considerations to work with. And then as we look at some of the examples that people have done, I've included really very good examples and then some that are not so good. On that blue plinth, we have these things. They both feel kind of blocky to me. Well, this one especially because it feels like a square. But the one to right here, that feels a little bit better to me because it doesn't feel like it's such, well, it's so obviously carved out of a block. I mean, that, so the taller of those two pieces feels like it's a little bit better solution for the situation. This reminds me of that second piece that we looked at, where it's almost like a sheet winding around on itself, but with something inside of it. So it feels a little bit more plump, I guess is a good word. But again, it's very smooth. Now this one is interesting to me because it almost feels like somebody's sitting wearing a specific kind of hat or moving their arms around or something. I'm not entirely sure. This one I like for the most part, except there's a couple areas right here that feel just a little bit clunky. Other than that, I think this is a pretty good way to address it. The next one here, these three images right next to each other, this kind of reminds me of an example of like a knuckle bone or something. It looks to me like that was one of the things they were referencing. Of course, it is not a knuckle bone. It's not recognizable as any real object, but that doesn't matter. It feels like it has elements of that. And again, it's polished and smooth. Next thing down, this one, I think all four of these photos are of the same object. I like this one as an example too, because it feels with this area sticking out right here in the middle. It doesn't feel blocky at all. It does fit into that same size parameter as the dimensions of your block, but the person, it feels to me like they stretched as far as they could, used as much of it as they could in unexpected ways. So they got this third leg sticking out as far as possible, and they rounded everything and smoothed it off really, really well. I think that turned out excellent. So I'm hoping that this is making a lot of sense as you go in. And if you've already worked on your carved biomorphic abstraction, and this has helped to get a clear idea of what we're supposed to be doing, definitely reapply, go back and touch it up some more. I wanted to reiterate the idea that the work logs are specifically for the work done for that part of the module. And if you worked one day for 4 hours and you did, half of that on one module and half of it on the other, then just separate it out and say, 2 hours for this or 2 hours for that. I know it's a pain in the neck, but it's part of the process of doing this to document your time specific to the different projects that you're working on. We're going to share this. This is Introduction to the Papier Mache module. And I know everybody's already seen that a little bit, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more. And this is an example that Jason was working on. This is a great example because it shows that biomorphic abstraction. He had a job for a long time casting dinosaur bones for museums, and you can kind of get a feel for some of those shapes in this. There's it's a little bit fleshier feeling than mere dinosaur or than straight dinosaur bones, but it's obviously abstracted. It doesn't have a relationship to an actual object other than some of the individual forms and shapes kind of do, some of these transitions. And when he applied the paper mache on this, he took strips, wrapped them around so they touched themselves, and they would stick to themselves like that. He smoothed it around with his hands, let it dry completely, then sanded it down, sanded it smooth, and did another layer. I think it's going to take at least 2 layers to get this so that it feels finished, and that you have the rounded edges. You don't have crinkled paper showing. Because one of the pitfalls of working with paper mache is that if you don't smooth it out, you can get crinkles. And in some cases, this will change the shape of your structure a little bit. That's totally fine. Making sure that you sand it so that it's smooth is really important. And there's some more directions and everything. And then this link I really like, this gourmet paper mache. This guy has done paper mache for years and does pretty amazing work just using paper mache. The reason why I refer to this as the Mighty Voltron sculpture is that we're going to go back to it a couple different times. You've carved something out of your foam. The next step is doing the paper mache. And I want to make sure that you see this really quickly. You need to be able to, you need to sand it smooth. And there's a reason for this, because you're going to be applying texture and color to it later. It needs to be sanded smooth. Again, Mighty Voltron refers to the several little robots that went to making one great big magical robot. And that is what we're going to be doing with this. We're doing 3 different processes and combining them all together to make one finished sculpture. So I put a note in here, important, before you paper mache your work, make sure you sand it smooth. This is necessary for the grade and also for the success of the paper mache, because like I said, you're going to be applying paint and texture to it later. So I'm hoping that this helps. If any of you guys have a working microphone, could you let me know if this is helping?
I do. Sorry, I joined a bit late because I wasn't looking at the time.
That's no problem.
I had submitted the project about like making the biomorphic abstraction. I think I said it right.
What's that?
The
What was your
project that you had.
question?
My question was like, that I, dang it, I forgot the question.
Well, if you've already submitted something and this is helping you to realize you need to do something else, you can go ahead and rework it and resubmit it. That's not a problem.
Yeah, because I think I had moved on to like a second to the other page, and then I had seen what it looked like, and I gave myself a panic attack. I was like, wait a minute, was I supposed to sand it now?
Yeah.
I pretty
Yeah,
much
that's
gave myself
important.
a panic attack. Like, wait, did I fail miserably already?
Well, and that's the thing. If you don't get the points that you want, you can always resubmit it for more points. That's not a problem at all. I wanted to talk about some more things. Instead, I think I actually have an emergency that I have to attend to right away, so I've got to wind this up right now. we're going to be talking some more, and I think I'm going to record myself later on, and I will just submit both of these in the attendance, but I've got to go right now. So I'm sorry about that, guys. I will get back to this, and we will reconvene. Well, I'll reconvene. You guys can watch the recording, all right?